Have you ever wished for an easier way to read trend and momentum right on a candlestick chart? Well, coming up, I'll show you how with Heikin Ashi charts. Hey traders, today I've got something for you a little bit different here. Something known as Heikin Ashi charts. I've heard that Heikin Ashi means average bar in Japanese. Not sure if that's true or not, but it makes sense due to the way that these things are drawn. And something that's interesting about Heikin Ashi charts is that they are calculated. They're not the actual open, high, low, close that you get with traditional candlestick charts. And because of this, there are some drawbacks to using them. So hang out and I'll cover what those drawbacks are here in a little bit. But you'll notice that on the left hand side, I've got Heikin Ashi chart, and on the right hand side I have traditional candlestick chart. This is for the NQ, the Nasdaq futures contract, and this is the exact same portion of time right here that we're looking at. And you'll notice on the left hand side of the Heikin Ashi chart, a lot of the bars look very similar. You have these bullish bars on the left, and they have no wicks on the bottom, just a wick on the top. And then the bearish bars, the red ones, have a wick on the bottom but no wick on the top, and this is all due to the way these bars are calculated. So there's really three main types of bars in a Heikin Ashi chart. You have a bullish bar, which has no lower wick and only an upper wick. And you have a bearish bar, which only has a lower wick and no upper wick. And then you have what is you can be thought of as kind of a neutral bar. Typically, this will show up as a doji or a spinning top type of a bar where you have an upper and a lower wick and a body that's smaller and somewhat centered between the two wicks. Now, one of the great things about Heikin Ashi charts, and the reason they're so useful, is that they really show trend and momentum right in the chart. It's very easy to see trend and momentum within the chart itself once you get used to reading them. Um, so you'll notice for this massive uptrend here, we have nothing but green bars straight up, and these are all the bullish type bars where we have a body with no lower wick and only an upper wick. And conversely, whenever the chart was the NQ was headed down, we have only bearish bars coming in here. Now, you'll notice that like over in this section, if you look over on the right here as I'm going through this, you'll see some bars of different color and different style that don't show up on the Heikin Ashi side, and that's because the way the Heikin Ashi is calculated, it essentially filters out some of that noise, and so that you get these pretty clean looking charts on the Heikin Ashi side. This is all due to the way the Heikin Ashi is calculated. Now, the way these guys are calculated is and obviously you don't really have to know how they're calculated. Your platform's going to do that for you, but it's very useful to have an idea of what's going on with these charts. It kind of gives you a little bit more of an intuitive sense to know this. Now, so on a Heikin Ashi bar, the close of the bar is the average of the open, high, low, and close. So the close of this bullish bar right here on the top is the average of your regular candlestick. So if you add together the open, the high, the low, and the close, and divide it by 4, you get the close of this Heikin Ashi bar. Okay, so now if you look right up here in TOS, the closing price is identified right here. So if I highlight this bar, you'll see that the close is 663.38. But over on this side for the candlestick, the close is 663.50. So they're different, and that's because the close is calculated on the Heikin Ashi side. Now, the open of the Heikin Ashi bar is the midpoint of the previous Heikin Ashi bar. So if you'll, this is a bullish bar, so the open is down here at the bottom, right at the bottom, and so you'll see where my crosshairs are. If you'll notice, my crosshairs are right about the middle of the body of the previous Heikin Ashi bar, right? So the open of a Heikin Ashi bar is the open plus the close divided by 2 is the midpoint of the previous Heikin Ashi bar. So let's look at this Heikin Ashi bar. The open is here, and if you look, it's right at about the midpoint of the previous Heikin Ashi bar. But over here on our candlestick side, that's nowhere near the case. The open is way different. It's in a totally different spot. If you'll look, I've currently have um, the cursors are synced up between the left and the right. So if you look at where the cursors are on the right hand side on the candlestick, I on the left on the Heikin Ashi I have it right at the open on this specific bar, and on the right hand side it's way off of that. We have more of a spinning top type of bar on the candlestick, but on the Heikin Ashi we still have a bullish bar. Okay, now that's all due to that calculation. Now the high and the low of a Heikin Ashi bar are calculated by the maximum or the minimum of the high or low and the open and the close. So the high of a Heikin Ashi bar is the maximum of the high of the candlestick or the open and the close of the Heikin Ashi. Okay, so whatever the maximum value is, that becomes the high of the Heikin Ashi. And conversely, the low is the minimum of the between the low of the candlestick bar and the open and close of the previous Heikin Ashi bar. That becomes the low of the Heikin Ashi. So the way these things are calculated, it shows momentum and trend a lot easier. Now, something that's very interesting, momentum. That is a great thing. You really need to know that when you're trading. And so let me point that out and show you how that looks on the Heikin Ashi here. Once you learn how to read these, they become very, very useful. And so here we have a very strong uptrend, and we see that it kind of gets started with a slightly smaller body bullish bar coming off of a neutral bar, right? And then the bodies start getting really strong and tall with wicks on the tops, big bodies all the way up. The wicks are pretty big too, and then we've got a huge wick on top with a big body, another big body, but the wicks are starting to get a little smaller, and then the difference between the wicks highs is decreasing as well. So here, if you notice the difference between this high and this high is pretty good. Between this high and this high, way it's a huge one, a huge gap. And then the difference between these two highs is starting to wane a little bit, starting to decrease. The bodies are starting to get a little bit smaller on the bullish side, so the trend is weakening. And just by looking at the Heikin Ashi chart, we can see that visually, very, very easy, right there, with no without having to worry too much about the type of candlestick and these kinds of things. So a lot of that information is kind of built into the Heikin Ashi bar once you learn how to read them. Now, uh, so this trend starts to reverse. We get a neutral bar. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes we'll go straight from a bullish bar to a bearish bar, but often times you'll see a neutral bar in here. Now, the neutral bar is just that, neutral. It doesn't mean that the trend is going to reverse. It could just be a continuation. It could just be a pause, and then it continues to take off to the upside. You really don't know, but it is a heads up. It's like, oh, hey, something's going on here. We're starting to pause just a little bit. This could be a reversal or it could be a continuation, but momentum's starting to fall out a little bit. Let's see what happens next. And in this particular case, we do reverse and start to come back down. If you'll notice, kind of a little bit smaller body on this bearish bar, and then the bodies start to get a little bit longer on the bearish bars, and then big bodies on the bearish bars, and then they start to drop off. And then, okay, so momentum is kind of waning out a little bit. And here we even have the wicks on this last the low from the wick on this last bearish bar is actually a higher low compared to this previous Heikin Ashi bearish bar. So that is some very interesting things about the Heikin Ashi chart. Now, as great as they are, you don't want to trade directly off of them. There are drawbacks, and so because of this, they make a great supplemental chart. You'd want to have this up next to a candlestick chart that you're actually trading off of. Now, as far as the drawbacks go, because the bars on the Heikin Ashi are calculated, you can't tell exactly where price is, the real current price, which is why you need to have a regular candlestick chart up in addition to the Heikin Ashi chart, so you can tell where price really is. And you probably want to use you can use the Heikin Ashi in conjunction with other indicators. You can add indicators onto it just like you could any other um, uh, regular candlestick chart. Um, and another thing about Heikin Ashi charts that may be a benefit or maybe a drawback depending on how you particular trade, and that there's no gaps in the Heikin Ashi chart because of the way it's calculated. So if you use gaps in your trading, if you look for gaps in your trading, then that could be a non-starter for you. It means you're not going to get any gaps on the Heikin Ashi chart. Now, that might be an interesting study to do is to look for gaps on the candlestick chart in comparison to the behavior on the Heikin Ashi chart. That's not a study that I've done or I have seen done, so that might be something kind of interesting to look into to kind of see if there's some kind of insight that can be gained uh, uh, with regards to gaps on the regular candlestick chart into the behavior of the Heikin Ashi chart in correspondence to that gap. Um, Now, it could be a benefit too if you don't really, if you want to filter out gaps, you don't really pay attention to them, they're a hindrance to your trading. Well, the Heikin Ashi is going to kind of filter that out for you, and so that could be of a great benefit also. So that's the Heikin Ashi chart. I use these all the time in trading, and they really help. They give me a little bit more of an intuitive sense of what's going on with the trend and momentum. And I think if you add these in, you'll and use them for a little while, you'll really come to like them. They're very, very interesting, very, very useful charts. And so let me know how that goes. If you give these guys a try, if you look into that gap study that I had mentioned, leave me a comment below. Let me know how that turned out, and see if you found anything interesting, or if you have any other questions about how Heikin Ashi charts behave or other ways to use them, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see if I can't get that answer for you right away. And then, like and subscribe to the video, and subscribe to the channel. Got lots of great content planned coming up. A lot of very useful and insightful uh, videos coming up. So I really enjoy it. Thank you very much for taking time to hang out and watch this, and good luck with your trading.